Recently, I finished my 8th read-through of the Hunger Games trilogy, and I am no less depressed now than I was the first time around. Part of that is because there's always some sadness when a book series you love comes to an end, but it's also because of how dark, heavy, and sad and depressing the end of Mockingjay is. Even though the war was won, the games are over, Panem is being changed for the better, so much trauma and loss can leave you quite melancholic, especially from Katniss's perspective, which is what we get. And for her, yeah, it's horrible. The cost, however, worth it for the future of Panem and everyone in it, will stick with her forever. Certainly one good test of a story is its rereadability, if you will. Do you thoroughly enjoy it every time you read through it? Do you get something new each time? My answer to both, of course, is yes. On top of that, however, is something that bugs me, not in a bad way, just puzzling, I guess. I have a list of questions that go unanswered, questions that, even with a prequel coming in May, will probably never be answered. Hey y'all, I'm the Geek Apprentice. Happy Hunger Games month, and may the odds be ever in your favor. So yeah, there are several story-specific questions that I tend to ponder upon each reread. Questions that, while they are not imperative to the story by any means, leave me wishing I could get some sort of interview with Suzanne Collins to see if she has possible answers. Though I would hope she would never take the J.K. Rowling route and just spout out random stuff to keep her fame. Who knows, she might would say, it's not important. She'd be right, and I'd be okay with that. Because really, they're not important. They don't need to be answered. I just have curiosity. Frankly, I'm glad that since she is releasing more stuff, that it doesn't include the same main line of characters. It's good the way it is, and it should stay that way. And it's honestly a good thing to leave some things unknown or a mystery. That creates a good story, so long as it's not mysteries about the actual plot itself. Still, all this said, these are questions that I wonder if others have had them as well. So, with that in mind, let's talk about them and speculate some answers. Let's begin with questions stemming from the first book, The Hunger Games. What is the first name of Mrs. Everdeen? After maybe my second or third read, I realized we never learn her name. Isn't that crazy that after 3 books there was never a moment to reveal her name, and we're reading from Katniss's point of view, for crying out loud. No one ever refers to her as anything but Mrs. Everdeen, your mom, her mom, what have you. Maybe since this is Katniss's thoughts, due to some deep anger she still feels deep down inside, she, without realizing, never says her first name, almost delegitimizing her subconsciously, if you will. What's really weird is the night after I wrote this script, I had a dream that her mom's name was revealed to be like Avila Pearl or something. Did Foxface eat the berries on purpose? It is made abundantly clear that Foxface, in addition to her incredible stealth, is incredibly smart, so how could she make the mistake of eating poison berries? One might say no one knew what the berries were, so it was an honest mistake. However, she would never eat a berry she didn't recognize. I've actually heard a myriad of theories on this exact topic, and while I don't specifically subscribe to one or the other, I want to point them out. One theory is that she was so tired, hungry, and borderline delusional that she mistook the berries for something else. Another is perhaps since she saw Peeta picking them, she was warned enough to assume that if he was gathering them, they must be okay, not accounting for the possibility and actual fact that he had no idea. And the final theory is that she did in fact eat them on purpose, but why? One thought is that she didn't believe she had a chance in the games anymore, possibly due to the fact that there was now a new rule saying that 2 victors from the same district could win, putting her at a clear disadvantage since her district partner was gone, and eating Nightlock berries would be a little bit of a quicker and less painful death. The other idea I've heard is that she didn't want Peeta to die, that she thought, if I'm going to die anyway, I don't want it to be Cato and Clove who win. I would rather it be Peeta and Katniss. Thus, she saves him from making a huge mistake. And it would tie into the last idea that she didn't believe she had a chance anyway, so this got rid of herself and saved Peeta. I doubt she believed the love story. Most didn't, except for citizens of the capital who were not big people in authority. She just would rather it be them that win than careers. Next question is, How did Thresh die? We know Cato killed him, Peeta says so in Mockingjay, however, even that is speculation. In the film adaptation, they make it seem like it was a mutt or something, but the books are true canon, and that is not so. Well, it could be. It happened while Peeta and Katniss were hiding in that cave, and it was pouring rain, so we don't truly know. Moving on to the second installment, Catching Fire. Who was shot after the old man in District 11 during the Victory Tour? Initially, both Katniss and us, the reader, believed that it might be a member of Thresh's family or Rue's family or both. Thankfully, we learn from Cedar, a District 11 victor and second-time tribute, that they are all okay. Well, at least at that point, we have no idea what happens to them during or after the war. But this begs the question, who was shot? There were 2 other gunshots after the first. Was it people who tried to fight back? Was it just 2 more into the same old man for good measure? We'll never know. Just another thing to haunt Katniss. What happened to District 12 Commander Peacekeeper Crais? If you never read the books, you have no idea who I'm talking about. He was the head peacekeeper of District 12 until Commander Thread took over. In the film, they make it seem like he was captured and suffocated, and while this is entirely possible, we don't get any sort of answer for him in the books. Nothing like the answers we are given for the red-headed, goofy, fun-loving peacekeeper Darius. Another character only book readers know. He's part of a whole other side story, and while it's really good, it's also equally terrible. Where were Effie and Cinna during the Quarter Quell announcement, and how did they react? This is another one of those I'm just curious type of questions. I think speculating about Cinna is a little bit easier, so we'll begin with him. I imagine he was either at a really low-key party not really doing anything, or he was just on his own. We know Cinna isn't one for all of the luxuries of the capital and is actually a working rebel behind the scenes, so it's entirely possible that knowing the Quell might be announced, he decided to stay at home. But the former is still an option, seeing as his wedding dress designs were being shown off, and he would probably have acquaintances that were begging him to come to a party so they could gush over his talent. And Effie? Oh, easily at one of the biggest parties of the capital, I'm sure, and I bet she had no trouble getting into them or getting invites in general, being the escort of the star-crossed lovers. How did they react though? Cinna, we know, would not have been pleased. Plutarch informs us that the rebels have been planning this whole revolution thing since before the Quell was announced, so it's entirely possible that Cinna immediately got to his feet, his brain already trying to figure out how to make sure Katniss is still the favorite. Like he said, he channels his emotions into his work, so that's what he got started with right away. Now Effie, I think it's possible something drastic happened in her heart right here. Imagine she's at this big party basking in the fame she only has because of Katniss and Peeta, and then the Quell is announced. It dawns on her, Peeta might be going back in. Katniss is for sure going back in. Her star-crossed lovers are going to be fighting to the death again. This might well be the moment that her heart began to change. The first time the clouds begin to disappear from her capital-trained eyes and begins to see the atrocity of it all, because for the first time, it's kids she cares about on a personal level. Maybe not always for the right reasons, but she does care. I mean, this is why the capital begins to get into an uproar, why Katniss's prep team is so distraught. Something isn't right about it all. It never was, but now capital citizens are beginning to get a glimpse into why. Finally. This would be far more true for Effie Trinket. How did Peeta kill Brutus? While we don't find this out until Mockingjay, we do eventually learn that Peeta managed to actually kill someone, though we have no idea how he did it. Brutus is large and strong, more so than Peeta despite his own merits of strength. Was Brutus injured and weak already? Did Peeta just have the upper hand based on his own weapon? We have no idea. You might ask, why didn't Peeta ever say? It's Peeta. Katniss doesn't like reliving her kills despite the fact that her dreams and PTSD don't let her do otherwise, so why on earth would Peeta be okay with reliving it? Especially since so many things trigger the reaction of the Tracker venom in the 3rd book, this would not be a good thing for him to talk about. And after he's healed in the end, what's the point? So yeah, we won't ever know, and I guess we don't really need to. And now for questions about the final book, Mockingjay. Where was Effie Trinket? Again, another question that makes no sense if you haven't read the books. In the book, Effie is nowhere to be found except for the very end when she helps prepare Katniss to assassinate President Snow. Instead, Plutarch managed to rescue Katniss's prep team, Octavia, Vania, and Flavius, but for a while, they were kept in the dungeon being starved and beaten on Coin's orders. All we know is that Effie was in fact captured by the Capitol, but we learn nothing about her treatment. She seems alright in the end, but it's entirely possible that they realized she didn't have any rebel information and that there was no one to use her against that was in District 13, so that's kind of sad, but probably true. What became of Johanna Mason and, I guess, Anabaria? Gale went to District 2, Katniss's mother to District 4, and likewise Annie to District 4, but what about Johanna and Anabaria? We don't know for sure, but it's probably safe to assume that they went home to their respective home districts. I would like to think that Johanna and Katniss kept in somewhat relative contact. I mean, it's not like they were buddies, but it's possible. And my final question, my 10th question, is actually an honorary question because while many ask it, they don't realize that we actually get a clear answer in the end of the book. Did Peeta ever return back to normal? Yes and no. He still has some flashbacks where a mix of PTSD and minuscule trace amounts of tracker venom affect him, but the old Peeta did in fact return. How do I know this? Well, anyone who's read the books should know this. When Peeta finally returns to District 12 after months of being in the Capitol Hospital following the war, Katniss says something very important. He looks well, thin, and covered with burn scars like me, but his eyes have lost that clouded, tortured look. This is how we know old Peeta is back. We read throughout the latter half of the final book that Katniss notices this clouded look to his eyes ever since being tortured and hijacked, but now that's gone. She had seen bits and pieces of him return, but the cloudiness had never quite gone away until now. The real, good, loving Peeta is back. The clouds are gone and he is normal. Well, as normal as a kid who was put through the Hunger Games twice, thrust into the center of a war where he was tortured and hijacked can be. So there are my 10, but really 9 curious questions I have about the wonderful book trilogy that is The Hunger Games. Let me know in the comments section if you shared any of these questions and what your speculative answers are. And of course, if you did enjoy this video, I would recommend subscribing, but that is up to you. I talk about things not just Hunger Games related, but also Zelda, Disney, Harry Potter, How to Train Your Dragon, and many other things, but those are the main ones. Anyway, that's all for today. Thank you for watching.